Do you need cash? Do you want to consolidate debt? Premier Credit can help. They provide quick and confidential loans for any reason. Their service is same day, and most loans are approved within minutes. You can apply in person or by the phone. Their experienced and knowledgeable loan professionals will leave you feeling confident that your loan is being properly handled in a secure manner. Premier Credit can be reached at 225-667-8100, or you can email WeSayYes@premiercredit.com, or stop by and spin the wheel at 139 Del Norte Avenue in Denham Springs. They're open Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and are a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast. If you're in the market to purchase a home or sell your home, then Tricia Johnston of Latter Blum Realty can assist. With over a decade of experience in the area, Tricia's vast knowledge of real estate makes her the perfect realtor to represent you. For more information, Tricia can be reached at area code 225-754-2000. or via her website at triciajohnston.com. Tricia Johnston, building a strong foundation of trust, one home at a time. Today's guest on the show is no stranger to Local Leaders. She was so popular, in fact, on her first sit down with me that I feature her every Friday with her real estate tip of the week. She is one of the top realtors in the Baton Rouge area and in the world of real estate, a bona fide expert. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Tricia Johnston of Latter Blum Realty. So with that, welcome again, Tricia, to Local Leaders, the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Always a pleasure to sit down with you and talk about real estate. So I'm excited, obviously, to have you here again. And last time we sat down, the real estate market was pretty hot. My first question today is, how's the real estate market right now? Is it still as hot as it was the last time we sat down?
Overall, the market's really busy. Houses are selling. Of course, each property is different. So overall, the market's booming. But if you look at specific property types, so single family residential is really busy right now. But if you're in a higher price point, higher priced houses might take a little bit longer to sell. Vacant land takes a little bit longer to sell. And also specific areas. So if somebody hears on the news that, oh, the real estate market's booming, but they're wondering, why isn't my house selling? Then there may be something specific about that location, the condition, that neighborhood. So real estate's very specific, but overall, the market is booming.
Well, that's a great thing to hear. We always want, my belief has always been the real estate market kind of drives the economy.
I agree.
It is, with real estate, as people get good jobs or as they succeed in life, the first thing they look to do is buy a house. They buy that house and that money gets, it's trickle down effect, really. It kind of gets distributed throughout the economy. And so when your real estate market is on fire, your economy's likely on fire as well. And that's always a good thing here in the United States, especially. But you bring up a good point, and that is that real estate, it will segment itself in a way. So just because, single family homes are on fire doesn't necessarily mean that vacant property is on fire. And I use the term on fire. I just do. But hot would be another term for that. Do you ever see, in your experience, you've been doing this a long time, do you ever see where just the entire, realm of services that you can get out of real estate, such as vacant lots and single family homes and new residential and existing homes, do you ever see them all kind of hot at the same time?
In general, when the market goes up, it goes up overall, but some property types just always take a little bit longer to sell. The higher price points, the vacant land, those things just in general take longer to sell than move-in ready. And another segment that might take a little bit longer to sell is if a house doesn't qualify for a particular financing amount. So a lot of buyers get FHA financing, for instance. So if a home doesn't qualify for FHA financing because the roof is damaged, it's missing appliances, it's missing some flooring, that removes an entire segment of buyers who qualify for FHA but don't have cash or can't qualify for conventional. So that home won't sell as quickly as a home that does qualify for FHA. So different little things like that, like I said, if your property's not selling, there's a reason why. And just get a realtor in there and y'all can kind of brainstorm and talk about why isn't it selling? And then do you want to make changes to the property so it can sell? Some things you can't change. You can't change a location, can't change a vacant lot into something it's not. You can't take a high price point property and you can reduce the asking price, but it's still going to be in a higher price point where you have fewer buyers in that buyer pool.
That's a great point. And something I hadn't considered, quite honestly, but that is a fantastic point. It only takes one buyer, really, doesn't it? So you could have a vacant lot that maybe has been sitting for a little while, but that one person that has to have it, comes up and it sells that fast because it's something maybe they had their heart set on, and maybe it's the perfect location for them. So I guess my point with that is, don't lose faith if you're someone that's dealing with an agent. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to sell tomorrow because it didn't sell today. But you really need someone like a Tricia Johnston, someone with the experience that can spot maybe, there may be a reason outside of the market that a house may not be selling or a vacant lot may not be selling. And someone with your experience, that experience is going to enable you the ability to maybe spot something that someone that maybe doesn't have that much experience in real estate may miss.
Right.
So I think that's an important quality to you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. One other thing I want to mention is sometimes if a property takes a little bit longer to sell, I tell a seller that selling a property is kind of like being on a dating app. Your property's on the market, but the right buyer might not be on the market yet. So you have to wait for that right buyer to start looking. So don't get discouraged if your property's for sale, whatever property you have listed for sale, and you're having lookers, but they're not the right buyer. That right buyer is going to come on the market. They're just not on the market yet. Because just like houses go on the market, buyers come on the market. And so you just have to wait for the right buyer who's going to fall in love with that property and find that it's the perfect match.
I love that, and I love the reference to the dating app. I didn't see that one coming, but that is a very good reference to what you just said. And so, yeah, I agree with that, obviously, 100%. And, one of the things that you're kind of known for is spotting maybe small details when it comes to your clients and their interests. And not only spotting those, but also paying attention to the small details yourself and the things that you may give your clients, that the detail may seem small, but it makes all the difference in the world, whether you're buying or selling, and how fast that process may occur. So tell us, one of the things that I think about is the locks that you use. We were discussing a little while back about some things that Tricia does. It kind of separates her, is a good way to put it, from maybe some other folks that are in the real estate business. And one of those is the locks that you use. I want you to tell everybody about that and your philosophy on that.
Well, it's the lock boxes. It's I use the electronic lock box to put the house key so all the realtors can access the property. And there's two different type of lock boxes. There's the electronic one that I use, and then there's the plastic combination lock boxes. and those are just not secure. They are easily broken into. Somebody can get that key. The electronic lock boxes, they are concrete encased, so they're very secure. Nobody can break into it. They're also programmable, so I can program that nobody can access the key in the lockbox before 9 a.m. or after 8 p.m. It cannot be opened. And then the last thing is it sends notifications. So I get a notification every time a realtor, an appraiser, whoever opens that lockbox to access the key, I receive an email. So if my client says it looks like somebody was in our home, I can look and see, did somebody access the key that maybe didn't schedule an appointment, which they're not supposed to do, but I can always know who's accessed the property. And it just comes down to my client's safety, and the safety of their property is top priority. And I don't want to have anybody having access to that key who shouldn't. And so using the electronic lockbox is just a safety feature. Not only does it help with knowing who's coming in and out of the house and what hours the house can be accessed, but just having my clients have that peace of mind that their home is safe.
Yes. And what she didn't mention, but is an important point to bring up, is that's quite a big investment for you outside of what a normal, lock box. I say normal, but the cheaper lock boxes that are more typical that folks use. It's significantly more expensive.
Yeah, the plastic combination lock boxes cost about $25 or $30, and the electronic lock boxes cost about $125.
Yeah.
And so sometimes realtors that don't use them will say, why do you spend so much money more on the electronic lock boxes? And it's because you can't put a price on safety and security of your clients.
BJ Pawn and Gun has been servicing the Livingston Parish community since 1990. If you need it, there's a good chance BJ Pawn has it. So go see them in Denham Springs. They're a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast. It's essentially like an alarm system for a seller, rather. Fantastic.
Yeah. The main thing, that I think about is, how would I want somebody to protect my home? How would I want somebody to make sure my house is safe and secure? So I'm treating their home and property and their safety the same way I would want mine to be treated.
Fantastic. So that's just an example of one of the small things that you do that is really an extra step for your clients. And there's another thing that you do, we talked about as well, and that is the marketing plan that you kind of form with your clients when they're in the process of selling their home. How important is a marketing plan?
A marketing plan is so important. If you don't have a marketing plan in place, it's going to be much more difficult to get that property sold, because it's all about exposure. So I market to buyers, obviously, but I also market to realtors, because they have 4,000 realtors, and a lot of them are working with buyers who may be right for that property. So I market, and it's print advertising, it's flyers out front, it's targeted online ads, I cast every net out there to make sure that every buyer looking in that area and price range, and every realtor showing in that area and price range, know that property's for sale. So to have a comprehensive marketing plan just really lays out the roadmap, because not every property is going to sell right away. Some will, some are going to take a while, and you have to have a roadmap, a plan that's going to continue to market that property, so that when that right buyer does come on the market, they know right away that that property's for sale.
Yeah, a plan is extremely important. So you want to make sure that your realtor has some sort of marketing plan available that they review. I would imagine you sit down with these people, you review it with them, kind of talk to them about exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to go about promoting their home and those sorts of things, especially with the internet now, Facebook, all these sorts of things. There's so many avenues that you can kind of get a seller's house out there onto the market and get eyes on it.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I put it in writing, the marketing plan, and those sellers, so they can see in writing I'm making a commitment to them of what I'm going to do to get their home sold. And the other thing, it kind of sets their expectations that what's going to be done week 1, week 2, week 3. And it also makes sure we're on the same page. Sometimes I'll be going over the marketing plan and they may ask, do you do this? Do you do that? And I haven't either gotten to it yet on the list, or it's something that I don't typically do and I explain to them why. But if it's important to them, then let's do it. So it's a teamwork thing. When we're going over the marketing plan, it's a conversation.
that's a great point you just brought up too, in that it avoids miscommunication, doesn't it? You know, I'll in my business of selling paint, I tell painting contractors all the time, anything you do, put it in writing, because you can verbally say something to a customer or client and they can misunderstand that. And if you don't review it, if you don't go over it, in my world, I'm going to put 2 coats of top coat and 1 coat of primer on this house. There can be a misconstruing there of what you were going to do. And if you don't have it in writing, there's nothing there to say, well, here's where I put it in writing. And in your case, it really protects your clients in the fact that this is what we agreed to do. And this is my commitment as Tricia Johnston, that I'm going to do all of these things and see them through. And it avoids all that miscommunication. That's a huge thing I tell people all the time. Put it in writing, and that way you know that everybody understands and everybody gets it. And it makes them comfortable as well.
Yeah, it also helps, like I said, set their expectations, because some people have a misconception about realtors that, a realtor just sticks the sign in the yard and hopes the house sells. Well, if you don't have a marketing plan, that might be the case. But, a lot of times, more often than not, when I go over the marketing plan with the seller, they're wowed. They're like, oh, goodness, you do so much. I had no idea. I thought, you're just going to put a sign in the yard. So I really like to lay it out there so that they can see how much work and effort and time is going to go into. I mean, I'm dedicated to getting their property sold. Whether it takes a week, a month, or a year, we're going to get this property sold. And this is our game plan, our roadmap to get that done.
Yeah. And it gives you a reference later on if something's, if 6 months down the road, maybe it hasn't sold yet, you can always go back and look and say, okay, what can we do differently, or what have we not taken advantage of yet, or whatever.
Absolutely.
It may be just the market at that time has changed or whatever, but always good to have something to refer to from a client standpoint, especially with regard in all that regard. So let me ask you, I mentioned at the beginning that you do a segment with me that is very popular. A lot of people view this. It's what we call it, the Tricia Johnston's real estate tip of the week. And you give these really neat tips. They're about a minute or so in length, but they're very important things that folks have a lot of questions on. For someone that doesn't do real estate every day, you may get, some realtors may get caught in the trap of, well, they understand this or they understand that, but you're able to kind of step back and put yourself, as you said earlier, in the client's position and kind of answer questions that a lot of people may not understand in real estate. So one of the ones you did recently that I found very interesting was you discussed the advantages of buying versus renting. And for those that may have not caught up on that particular episode yet, I wanted to cover that because I found it very interesting. Why should someone buy a house versus renting, an apartment or a house or whatever?
Well, there's several advantages. One thing is the equity that you get. When you're paying rent, you're just giving that money away. You're paying your landlord's mortgage in essence every month. So you're building equity in a home so that you can, part of your monthly payment goes to interest and insurance and taxes, but the other part goes towards principal, and that's your ownership in the property. The second advantage is tax advantages. So you get to deduct property taxes and you get to deduct, as long as you live in the home, you get to deduct your interest expense. So the portion of your monthly payment that goes towards interest, that's a tax deduction. There's also sometimes tax credits. If you put solar panels on the house or energy efficient windows, you can get tax credit for these things, but only if you own the property. The renters don't get those tax deductions. That can make a big difference on your end of the year, how much refunds you get or how much taxes you owe. The other advantage is you get to do what you want to the property. If you want to add a fence, if you want to add a covered patio, you want to paint the bedrooms a certain color, paint your front door a certain color, all these things, spruce up the gardens, have a vegetable garden. Some of these things that your landlord may not allow you to do is things you can do when you own the property. And then one of the biggest advantages is once you've lived there 3, 5, 7 years and you're ready to get something bigger or in a different location, you can either keep that property as a rental property and now you have as part of your retirement rental income, or you can sell it and take the equity and buy your next home wherever that's going to be. So when you finish renting, you don't get any of that money back that you paid in rent. But when you own, when you can either sell it or keep it as a rental property, you have that income coming in or the equity you pull out to invest in your next home. So there's just so many advantages, especially now that interest rates are so low. There's no reason for somebody to continue paying rent. If you can qualify to buy, it's a good time to buy.
Agreed 100%. And you brought up some really good points there. One, it's an investment versus an expense.
Yeah.
In my mind. Yes, if you pay a house note, you have an expense every month. You're paying a house note, but you're really just kind of putting that money in the bank is the way I look at it, because if you ever are in a need to sell that house or you want to sell that house, you have equity in that home. And so you're really investing. That's the way I look at that. When you're paying rent, stuff like that, you're basically investing for somebody else. This person doesn't own the property, but they're getting all the advantages of you paying the bills, really. So I would agree 100% with that. The rates are a great point that you bring up. With them being as low as they are now, there's really no reason to rent. Not only that, Miss Tricia, but you can, your note is typically less if you rent a 3-bedroom house. If you buy a 3-bedroom house than if you were to rent a 1-bedroom apartment. They're about the same amount that you would pay out every month, on a 30-year loan that you would owning the house.
Absolutely.
So don't get caught in that trap. Or if you are currently renting and you're trying to get to a point in your life where you can make a buy, it's a good time to do it. It's a good time to really hammer that down, especially with the rates as they are. And you brought up interest rates. You're a realtor and your ultimate expertise is not necessarily loans and things like that. But you know a lot about them because you deal with them a lot. And you deal with people who are bona fide experts in those fields. But I wanted to ask your thoughts on, and the reason I bring this up is I've gotten a lot of questions lately, and believe it or not, one person said, ask Tricia next time she's on your show. And I said, well, I actually know that answer, and I did, but we want to get this out here for the viewers, and that is with interest rates. They have dropped, and they've gotten really low. This has made national news and those sorts of things. People watch the news, and they see, and I'll just throw a number out there, interest rates are have been dropped to 0.05%. Where I think the confusion lies is sometimes the client will assume they're getting their loan for 0.05% because they saw it on the news. What is the process? How does that work with regard to interest rates?
So when you see on the news that the Fed rate has dropped, I had a client ask me in March about, she saw on the news the rates were dropping to 0%. That's actually the amount that the interest rate that a bank pays to use the money. So the bank has to make money on that money. So the consumer's rate is not going to be 0.5. But whenever the Fed rates drop, it definitely affects the consumer's rate, whether you're getting a home loan or a car loan. So it has an effect on it, but that Fed rate is not the rate that the consumer gets. But we're seeing right now rates are hovering right around 3%. And that 3% rate is still excellent. But when you hear, that the rates are zero, a consumer can't get 0% loan. On a car, you can,
right?
But not on a house.
Yeah, sure.
So, so the Fed rate dropping helps consumers for sure. That's why we see our rates so low right now. But the Fed rate is not the rate that the consumer gets.
Right. So essentially, it's unless you own, you go out and own a bank, then you can loan yourself. They loan it to the bank at that rate, and then it's kind of like a markup. So if the bank normally loans out at a let's say a 3% markup, well, that as the rate drops that the bank borrows that money at, the rate is going to drop for me to borrow that money to buy a house, essentially by that kind of like by that same markup percentage. So if you have any more questions, Tricia's got some friends that she can refer you to on the loan side of things. It could definitely help you on that. But just wanted to highlight that because I have had several people ask me, much like you, about that. So you're an agent for Latter Blum Realty. If someone would like you to represent them in the home buying process, but let's say they've got their heart set on a house that is not a Latter Blum house, you can't represent them in that case?
I can. As a licensed realtor, I can show a buyer any home. So if it's a Latter Blum listing or if it's listed with another company, I can even show them properties that aren't necessarily listed for sale. For instance, a for sale by owner or new construction, because some new construction is listed for sale, but they don't put all their properties on there. But the sales rep in the model home represents the builder. They're not a realtor. They're just the builder sales rep. But in any case, whether it's new construction, a listed house for sale, or a for sale by owner, the seller will pay the realtor fee for the buyer. So it does not cost the buyer anything at all to have a realtor representing them. I always say, why would a buyer not want a realtor to represent them? Because it doesn't cost them anything. Yeah. They have fees with the mortgage. They have loan fees, title search, home inspection. They do have expenses, but the realtor fee is not one of them. That's something that's paid on the seller side.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a scenario.
Okay.
So if I'm looking for a house and I go into a beautiful new neighborhood, and at the front of this neighborhood is a sign, and that sign is big and giant, and it says XYZ Builders Neighborhood. And I go in there, but I love Tricia Johnston. She's the only one selling, helping me to buy a house. I go in there and I see the house of my dreams. I can call you and I can say, Tricia, I found it, but it's in XYZ Builders subdivision. You can still be involved in that transaction, right? You can still represent me in that transaction. Absolutely.
In most cases, I probably already have shown in that neighborhood. I already have all the information. I know what the builder's incentives are. But if not, then I contact the builder. The builder has already agreed to pay the realtor fees. So there's nothing, involved in that. But the buyer has to call me and let me make that initial call, whether it's the builder. If you see a for sale sign in front of a house, you would want to call me. You call the agent on the sign, they're representing the seller. You want to have your realtor representing you. And so, but I have the ability to show the property, new construction. I'm closing on Monday on a new construction home that I've been with the buyers since they picked their lot, their floor plan. We had fun picking out their colors and selections and everything. So it's a fun process buying new construction, whether you buy something that's already a spec house, already built, or choose your lot and build it from the ground up. It's a fun process, but you definitely want your own realtor representing you, and your realtor fees are already paid. Now, when that buyer goes to sell the home in 5 or 7 years, then they pay the realtor fees because then they're the seller.
So the seller always pays the realtor fees.
That's right.
Okay. And look, folks, listeners out there, you can actually, if you're looking for a house, it will cost you nothing to have Miss Tricia Johnston help you with that. Let me tell you how much of a big deal that is. I mean, that's, you should be $1 million by yourself, but I mean, for this lady to be able to work as hard for you as she would, and you're not even responsible for the realtor fees, it's kind of a no-brainer, I would think. But something that a lot of people probably don't realize. So a good thing for us to bring up and talk about. A lot of people think that there's got to be a cost to something like that, and there is, but it's the that's the responsibility of the seller, not the buyer. So very, very important we make that clear. Now, obviously trends change. So in the 70s, it was shag carpet. It was wood paneling, all those sorts of things. The reason I know is because I have a house that was built in the late 70s, and I had shag carpeting in there when I bought it, wood paneling. And let me tell you, it was pretty wild. I changed that out real quick, but not so much today. Not very popular is the shag carpeting, is it?
No.
Wood paneling kind of going by the wayside. However, there are some hot additional features in 2020 that people are kind of looking for. Now, you are out there every day. You're dealing with these buyers when they're saying, this is what I want. It's got to have this. And some of those things never change. If you're someone that likes a pool, you're going to always look for a house with a pool. And that may be, that's probably been in vogue, I guess you could say, since houses were around and pools were made and invented. But what are some things in 2020 that you're seeing that are really hot that people almost always request or, look for this? It's got to have this. Like, Tiffany C-Card with Home Key Mortgage combines the experience and knowledge you need to make your mortgage loan a smooth, stress-free process. Reach out to Tiffany for more information on the vast mortgage programs available in the Livingston Parish area. Tiffany C-Card of Home Key Mortgage, a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast.
A lot of this is being driven by COVID. A lot of people are spending a lot more time at home. And that's really part of what has fueled the boom in the real estate market is buyers not being content with what they thought they wanted in a home has changed in 2020 because they're home so much more. So they want a larger yard. They want a nice covered patio, an outdoor kitchen. If you have a pool and you want to sell your house, make it look like an outdoor paradise instead of a chore. Because if a buyer's looking for a pool, they want it to be appealing, for that staycation feel.
Right.
A lot of people are working from home. So a home office or a bonus room to do homeschooling or virtual learning. A nice kitchen because people are cooking at home a lot more and eating out a lot less. So a nice kitchen where you can a gas stove or a lot of countertop space. Home entertaining's a lot bigger now with football games not having the attendance allowed as usual. A lot more people are hosting LSU and Saints football gatherings at their home. So all those things that make your house appealing to spend more time in, those things are more attractive. And like I said, that's why more buyers are out there looking, because before they didn't need a home office. They didn't need a homeschool space. They were going to take vacations, and now they're not taking those vacations. They're staying home. So they want their home to be that place where they love to hang out. That's
actually a great point that I hadn't thought of was, home office space now. A lot of people, Tricia, they worked for major companies, pick one, AT&T or something, and they went to work every day. They were high up on the corporate ladder, and AT&T has figured out that, wait a minute, you can work from home, save us some money. We'll maybe, I don't know, pay you a little bit extra, but you stay home, you have home office. And that prior to COVID, that wasn't necessarily as much of an obvious thing. And so, I have not thought about, but you bring up a good point that COVID has kind of changed maybe some trends in that market with what people are looking for. I'll tell you a funny story. So I actually had mudrooms. Okay. Mudrooms are pretty popular right now.
Right.
Here's something funny. So about a year and a half ago, I had a builder that was rebuilding his own house, and he, I did all the paint for that. And he says, and this is the color going in the mudroom. I had no idea what a mudroom was. No idea what a mudroom was. Of course, I didn't act like that to him. I'm like, okay, mudroom. So I go home and I ask my wife, I'm like, what is a mudroom? And she said, well, that's kind of where they take their shoes off and stuff like that. I'm like, people build a room to take their shoes off? She says, absolutely. And I had no idea. I mean, I kind of take mine off at the front door if they got mud on them. But interesting that, I just thought that was funny. I'm like, man, as long as I've been in the business and I've never heard of a mud room, but those are popular.
It's very
Apparently.
popular, and that really brings home your point that what's popular now wasn't popular 10, 15, 20 years ago. There was no such thing as a mudroom before, and now almost all new construction, when you come in through the garage, there's a mudroom area, or when you come in through the back door or right by the front door. So there's a mud area to put your shoes and your jackets and your school bags, all those things. So instead of cluttering the kitchen, the living room, or the bedrooms, there's a dedicated space for all those things to go. But you're right, that's a newer feature that's become popular over, say, the last 5.
Well, I'm going to tell you what. Next house I get, I want you to find me a mudroom. How about that? I want a mudroom. I need that in my life.
We'll find you a mudroom and the house around it.
There you go. Yes, definitely need the house around it. Sounds great. Also, in a prior episode, you mentioned what you feel like is the most important thing a seller could do, probably, in your opinion, before listing their home, prior to. I wanted to cover that a little bit. With you had discussed curb appeal as being a big thing. Let's kind of cover that.
I think curb appeal is the most cost-effective thing a seller can do. And the first reason is it's the professional photos that I have taken. It shows up in that so well, because the first thing buyers do is look online at a house. And if the curb appeal is good in those professional photos, the next thing they do is get in their car and drive by that house. Before they even call their realtor to schedule an appointment to see it, they get in their car, they drive by that house, and the curb appeal pops or it doesn't. And that's when they decide, do I want to schedule an appointment to see this house? So by the time that buyer schedules an appointment to see your house, they've already looked at the pictures online, they've already driven past it. So that showing is almost like a third showing. They've already looked at it twice, and now they want to come see it in person. And it's so easy to improve your curb appeal. You want to clean up your yard, spruce up your gardens, put down some fresh pine straw, trim the bushes that are overgrown, put a fresh coat of paint. You don't want peeling or chipping paint on the house.
I like that one.
The front door is a big thing. Make sure that front door is not peeling and chipping. If there's a gutter hanging, tack it back up. Take care of those little minor repairs that you've been putting off because you spend all your time in your backyard. Maybe you neglected the front yard, because the buyer doesn't want to buy a project. They want to buy a home that's move-in ready in most cases. And the other thing to think about, clean that front entry, because when a buyer is coming to see your house, they've scheduled that appointment, they're standing there waiting for their realtor to open that electronic lockbox. What's the buyer doing? The buyer's looking around. They're looking at the front entry. If you have wasp nests or peeling and chipping paint or any of these things going on up front, that's making a negative first impression before they even cross the threshold of the front door. So I think curb appeal, it's so easy to do. A weekend project, get that front yard and front curb appeal spruced up. Of course, once they get in the house, you need that to look good too. But the curb appeal's, I believe, the most important thing that helps a buyer decide, am I going to go see that house or is it not for me?
I agree 100%. And you bring up a good point in that these people are going to drive by probably a couple times before their realtor even gets the call that, oh, I found my dream home. And if they drive by and you've got, shrubbery that is just overgrown or something like that, that could create maybe a negative condensation there in their mind of what's going on with that house. Not only that, but I would imagine, if a prospective buyer is walking up to the front door and they see something like chipping paint, they're probably calculating in their head, well, that's going to be about $5,000 to, repaint the outside. So maybe that's their negotiating tool now. And maybe in their mind, they're going to try to negotiate that off the price because, hey, I've got to repaint it. And so if you have those things done up front and taken care of it, you're liable to hold a little more money in that house. William Waldrop of TWFG Insurance in Denham Springs can service all of your insurance needs. Offering auto, life, health, and commercial insurance, William Waldrop of TWFG Insurance is a proud supporter of Local Leaders, the podcast.
Absolutely. If you think about the fresh coat of paint, and then one thing I didn't mention before, but pressure washing is such an easy thing to do, but it just makes that front sparkle and shine instead of looking drab and dingy. It's just so, you do your pressure washing, your fresh coat of paint, spruce up that garden. It's a whole different house. Yeah,
people are very visual.
Yes.
That's why the professional photos that you have done are so important. Because especially, I think buying anything is a feeling that you get. So you see a picture of a house or you drive by that house and it's beautiful and you fall in love with it. Everything is visual that you're seeing. So you want those positive visual pictures and in your head of that house. You don't want to walk up to it and see a wasp nest and you're doing this and all those sorts of things that we do. So, great job with you doing the professional photos. That's huge. I've seen them both. I've seen people post pictures that are obviously from a iPhone or whatever, and there's a big difference in just the visual side of that home. So another thing that you do that people need to keep in mind is those professional photos that you have done.
And I'll tell you this too, something that I do when I'm working with sellers is the first thing we do is we walk through the property. I walk front yard, in the house, backyard. I'm looking at the house through a buyer's eyes, and I tell them, get down these wasp nests, pressure wash the front. I'm not asking them to spend a whole lot of money. I'm giving them things. If a closet needs to be decluttered or, a bathroom tub maybe needs to be refinished, I give them these tips because I'm looking at the house through a buyer's eyes. I want to make sure if there's pet odor, we talk about how can we, neutralize that pet odor. Anything that might be a negative for those buyers, because the seller lives there. When they go home, they're not looking up and seeing, there's dust on the air return vent or on a ceiling fan or baseboards. I tell them, get these things taken care of. So by the time I leave, they have a to-do list and they're not mad about it. They're excited about it. Right. They know that this is going to be a good return on the investment of the time. And it's mostly things they can do themselves, but a good return on their investment of time. And it's going to make their house sell quicker and for a higher price. And I'll tell you a quick story about how important it is to clean up that front entry. I was showing houses to buyers one time, and there was a wasp nest. It wasn't my listing. It was just a house they wanted to see. And we get there, and while I'm opening the lockbox, there's this big wasp nest in the entry, and a wasp came down and stung their little boy. He had wasp allergies. They had to rush off with him. We never did get to see that house, because they had to take care of this medical emergency, all because there was a wasp nest there. And so it turned into a situation that, could have been avoided. A lot of times sellers come in and out of their home through the garage or through a back door, side carport. Well, if you don't come in through your front door, go take a look at it and make sure that it's safe and appealing. But it's an important thing to get all that cleaned up for more than just curb appeal, but also for safety reasons.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, Tricia will basically give you a little punch out list, kind of like a builder. And she'll say, I'd recommend this be done. And the good thing about Tricia is she's going to be reasonable about it. So she's not going to have you make a, crazy investment to not get that investment back. She's been doing this so long and is such an expert. She kind of knows. She's that fresh set of eyes. Like she mentioned just a second ago, you're in that house every day. Things tend to blend in. You don't notice that wasp nest in the corner, maybe because you don't go out of that door. You don't notice maybe on the interior of your home that you have, a spot on your ceiling that you never see. But Tricia walks in and she's a fresh set of eyes. So she's looking at it from a buyer's standpoint. And that's extremely important.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, I am reasonable. I don't want somebody to go in and spend a whole ton of money. I'm giving them the most cost effective things to do. So I'm reasonable. I'm going to treat their money like it's mine. I don't want to spend it if I wouldn't want to spend it on my own house. But the other thing is I'm honest. I think sometimes realtors are afraid to be honest with somebody because they don't want to hurt their feelings, or they think if I tell them the truth, they're not going to hire me as their realtor because I told them their house smelled, like pet odor. But I feel like I want to tell them up front because I think, and sellers appreciate the honesty. That's been my experience, is that they want me to be honest with them. They don't want their house to sit on the market for 3 or 6 months because nobody told them that it had an odor, or their furniture is too much furniture and made a large house feel too small, or the paint colors were too dark, so it made it feel like a dungeon or a cave. Take those heavy curtains down, open up the blinds, let some light in. So just things like that. I'm reasonable, but I'm definitely honest. I tell people just exactly what I would want to be told if I were that homeowner. Be honest with me, shoot it straight so we can get this house sold. That's the end goal. Get it sold as quickly as possible for the highest price possible. And that's what I'm trying to help them do.
That's awesome. And, it's really, you're making a commitment to them that you're going to sell their house. And at the end of the day, you have to be honest about what you think it'll take to sell that house, or maybe what's causing that house not to sell. And that requires some character. And you're right. I mean, some realtors may hesitate to tell someone, your house smells like cat odor or dog odor. But at the end of the day, what Tricia Johnston is not going to have you do, and she's going to make sure you don't do by telling you, is in 6 months say, why didn't you tell me that it smelled like cat odor? You could have sold it 6 months ago. That's never going to happen with this lady, guaranteed.
Yeah, a huge part of my relationship with my clients is trust. And if I'm not honest with them, how can they trust me? So it's mutual respect and mutual trust that we have with each other. And so I build that trust by being as honest as I can about what I'm going to do to sell their home, or what I'm going to do to help them buy that home. I do the same honesty with buyers as well. When I'm showing houses to buyers, I'm pointing out if I see a crack in the ceiling, if I see, a crack in the brick outside, or I see something that might be a little bit of cause for concern, not to talk them out of buying that house, but to make them aware. If it's a house on a busy street, you need to think about resale. If it's going to bother you living on a busy street, will it bother somebody? It's going to be harder for you to sell a house on Range Road than it would be tucked into a subdivision. But if that's the right house for them, I want them to buy it, but I want them to buy it with their eyes wide open. So I go in being honest with buyers, honest with sellers, and that builds trust.
It builds a strong foundation of trust, one home at a time, does it not?
It does.
That's
well
her
played.
slogan. So let me ask you, Tricia, and that's a great segue to my next question. It's like you read my mind on that one. So some things that buyers should look for when they're choosing a home outside of the home itself. So the home's important. I mean, that's where you're going to spend all your nights and maybe, in some of your days, and outside of work, that's probably where you're going to hang your hat. And so that's very important. But what are some other considerations that a potential homeowner wants to look for relative to their home decision?
So the home, the structure itself is just one piece of that pie. You also have to look at the surrounding properties, the neighborhood. Is there an HOA, a homeowners association, and are there restrictions I take care of all of that. If I list a house for sale, I have the restrictions and the plat map, all of that I get ahead of time so that any buyer has any question, those questions are answered. But when I'm representing a buyer, I get the restrictions. I make sure, because if they want to build a shed or a workshop or run a business out of the home, can those things be done? I don't want somebody to buy a house with a specific intent in mind and then find out after they bought that house that they can't do what they hope to do. That it was important to them to have a workshop. We're going to make sure they can build a workshop during their inspection period, or sometimes before we even submit an offer. I was showing houses yesterday to a couple and he wants a workshop. That's his main thing. The house is her thing and he wants to be able to build a workshop. And we looked at houses. He picked one that he liked. We're looking at the restrictions right now before they even submit an offer because it's that important to him.
When purchasing a new home or refinancing an existing mortgage, do you know what transpires from the time of application to the day of settlement? At Southern Oaks Title, they realize your home is your most valuable asset. They understand the stress associated with purchasing or refinancing a home and are available to answer questions or concerns you may have regarding your settlement. Their staff of dedicated professionals will guide you through the entire process and will assure you are protected against adverse title claims or risk long after your closing. Southern Oaks Title Company. Close with someone who cares.
So school district, if your child is in a certain school district and you want them to not have to change schools, we make sure that every house we look at is in that school district. I had a client one time, a buyer client, who wanted to be able to have chickens. She was moving from an apartment and she wanted her own home so she could have chickens. We needed to make sure that the house she bought was not in a neighborhood that would not allow her to have chickens. So you never know what a buyer is going to look for, but that's part of my initial consultation with the buyer. I have conversations. It's not a questionnaire, check. It's let's have a conversation. I want to get to know you. What's important to you? What are you looking for? What are your plans? Why are you buying a house? When you move there, what are you going to need and want? What's your wants? What's your needs? That's important. And then that way, sometimes they don't know something's a need until we start talking about it. Then I say, oh, well, so you need an office. Oh, well, yeah, they didn't mention that she works from home every day. Right. So, I'm adding things to what they thought their wants and needs were by having that initial conversation. Just makes it so much smoother of a process because it goes back to I want it to be an enjoyable process.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's a home. It's the biggest purchase you're likely to ever make. You want to make sure that you don't get into that home and then figure out, oh, we've got 4 kids and didn't check the school district or the buses don't go here or whatever it may be. So that's some good information because people do get, in my opinion, locked into the perfect house. And there's a difference to me between the perfect house and the perfect situation. And sometimes you've got to look outside of that. And you covered a lot of good points there with things that you definitely need to consider. And so you sit down with these people, you actually go over this, and you get them all the information they need relative to if they have restrictions in that neighborhood, for example. These people don't need to go on their own and contact an HOA and say, what are your restrictions? You're going to take care of that.
I take care of all that. And one thing I think, because I've been doing this for 14 years now, one of the things that I really think a value add that I give for buyers is to know what questions to ask. If it's a first-time home buyer, they may not know what the different flood zones are. So they don't know that a flood zone X means flood insurance isn't required, but I always tell them you should get it anyway because we don't know where it's going to flood just because it's in a flood zone X. But anyway,
and a lot of people learn that.
Right. Sometimes couples will say, oh, we want a house that's on the water, like a subdivision pond, so we don't have any backdoor neighbors. Well, one question that I always find out is your neighbors, is the whole neighborhood going to have access to that water behind your property? Or is it private just for you to use? Because it's different from different subdivisions and properties. And you don't want them to move in and they're so excited they're on water and now their neighbors are coming and launching canoes and fishing, and you're in your kitchen fixing a cup of coffee in your bathrobe, and you have neighbors in your backyard practically. So these are questions that a buyer might not think to ask, but by the time they're in there and it's their reality, they've already bought the home. So I try to make sure that we have all the bases covered, because I want the phone call from them a month after they move in to be, we love our home, we're so excited. That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear anybody say, well, we wish we would have known this and we wish we would have known that. So that's one thing that I really think is a value add, is that I make sure that we're asking all the right questions. You know, like I said, not to talk anybody out of buying a house, but to make sure they know what they're buying, because it's one of the biggest financial investments they'll make, and I want to make sure it's a good one.
It really is. And because of the type of person you are, you would never, you know, I'm sure you sit back and you're like, I never want anyone to feel like I didn't give them all the information.
Absolutely. I'm an educator. I educate people on what they're about to buy, and the decision is theirs, but I want to make sure I give them all the information they need to make the right decision.
That's all you can do, Miss Tricia Johnston. You're great at your job. So one thing I do want to mention again is whether you're a buyer or a seller, Miss Tricia Johnston can help you in either one of those processes. If you have questions that you're struggling to get answers to, she's someone, I can't stress enough how good she is at what she does with Latter Blum Realty, and you would be well served to have Tricia represent you, especially in the market right now with as hot as it is. I think experienced realtors are very important, because number one, the connections they have. They just know a lot of the different people that you need to know in the home buying process, but also their knowledge of the area. So when you're a full-time realtor, you have a knowledge of this area that you may not have if this is just something you kind of do every now and then, you know, and so highly recommend Miss Tricia for your next purchase, whatever it may be, and that mud room is coming soon.
Yeah. I was going to say something too about, you said if you have any questions to ask. One of the things that I really love about doing that real estate tip of the week that I do for your podcast is that I want buyers and sellers to know that there is no such thing as a dumb question. If you want to know the answer to it, I have the knowledge, and I don't think knowledge is worth anything unless you share it.
That's right.
And so I want to give people that share the knowledge that I do have about real estate. So if somebody has a question, I don't mind a phone call, and, you know, I get it. We have some mutual friends, you and I, and they'll text, call, or email me questions. I got one this morning from a mutual friend of ours asking me what my thoughts were on a home warranty. Should she get a home warranty? Should she not? What were my thoughts on that? I love that kind of thing, because I can give my advice, my opinion, share my knowledge, and then she makes the decision on that. So there's no question that, you know, if I know the answer, I'll answer it. But if I don't know the answer, I'll find out. I had somebody call me last night to thank me for giving them some advice about some title insurance. They were having a really bad issue. I was actually her parents' realtor. And the parents called me a couple of months ago and said, our daughter's having this problem, and what should she do? And I said, well, the first thing she needs to do is find out if she has title insurance. And then that was a few months ago. Last night, the daughter called me to thank me. She said that title insurance is paying the full claim because I gave them the advice. She said, never occurred to me to check to see. And we didn't know, but we did have title insurance, and it paid out. So I love getting those calls and answering those questions, you know, and she was grateful enough to call me last night to say thanks.
Yeah, and that makes you feel good from your standpoint. And, you know, you're a full-time realtor. You do this more than 9 to 5, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she called me. I think it was 7:30, 8 o'clock last night. Yeah. And she called, and, you know, of course, I answered the phone. That's what we do, right?
Yeah.
And,
we don't shut it off. That's for sure.
What a wonderful way to end my day yesterday is,
Absolutely.
You know, having somebody call to thank me for some, you know, and all it was me answering a question that her parents had. A 5-minute conversation with her parents really got her, you know, whole situation resolved.
It makes all the difference in the world when you're expert at what you do. And well, we're both experts at our own little things, and we love to share our knowledge. And there's people tell me that too. They say, you're going to think this is the stupidest question you've ever heard. And I'm like, the only stupid questions you have are the ones you don't ask.
Don't ask. That's exactly right.
Don't ever assume, because if I know the right answer and you assume and do it on your own, you may be wrong, and it may be a bad decision. It may be something that costs you in the long run. So honestly, I never feel like people have stupid questions. I'm sure you don't either. And I feel great when I know the answer. I don't know it all, but like Miss Tricia said, we can always get the correct answer if we don't know it.
Yeah.
She probably knows it all, but I don't.
But I'm passionate about real estate, so I get excited when I can help
Same
somebody.
for me. Yeah.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I texted you probably about 4 weeks ago. I had a question about painting a wrought iron gate outside my house, and
I
said,
remember.
when should I do that? And you said, when the weather gets a little cooler.
That's
so
right.
Now I'm going to get the paint now that we're getting a little cooler weather coming in. But you weren't in a hurry to sell me paint in July. You said, wait till the weather gets cooler. It's better for the paint and it's better for the painter, is what you said.
Exactly. Yeah, I did. And exactly like you, in that I want to be honest. If I can't get that sale right now because I'm being honest that you could run into an issue, then I don't want that sale right now. I want to make sure that you don't ever come back and say, Jim, why didn't you tell me I couldn't paint when it was 120 degrees outside? I want to be honest.
But I was happy to have an expert in paint. I know a lot about real estate, but I don't know a whole lot about paint. So it felt great to be able to just text you the question. And I knew you were going to be receiving that text, not thinking, what a dumb question. But I'm so glad she asked.
Yeah. No dumb question thought. It was more like, yes, I know the answer to this. I'm going to look so good.
And you did.
So like you and I always do when I have you on, I like to do little fun facts. Those are neat little things, and I do those on every show, and I try to relate those to the industry that I'm in that particular show. So we're going to talk some fun facts today with real estate. Most of these you'll probably know the answer to, but I bet some of these viewers won't. So I did about 6 of these. We're going to cover them one by one. So, Miss Tricia, 67% of U.S. residents are actually homeowners, which surprised me. That's higher than I thought. I would have thought less than half, but 67%, which is good. I'm glad that 67% are, but in comparison, Louisiana homeowners are about 65.5%. So they're a little under the average homeowners nationwide, percentage-wise of population. But some interesting stats there that surprised me a little bit. I thought it'd be a little less, but we want 100% to be homeowners. So what that tells me, there's like 40 more percent of people you need to go sell homes to. All 40% of y'all call Miss Tricia.
Okay, I'm on it. I gotta
go. Yeah, there you go. So Dane Arnold with iTrade Exchange has been enabling small business in the Livingston Parish area to save cash through his network of over 300 participating Livingston Parish businesses. Saving cash by trading services with other exchange members is what iTrade Exchange is all about. For more information, contact Dane Arnold at 225-205-3640 or visit iTradeExchange.biz. Here's another interesting one. The average home price in the U.S. is $267,300 compared to Louisiana at $171,504. Now, what that tells me is real estate's on sale in Louisiana. So you're actually getting more house for your money in Louisiana than maybe is a national average. Stats kind of a little skewed because we're not taking into consideration the mansions that are out there selling. I mean, they're going off a raw average of the amount of houses. But interesting that Louisiana real estate is actually lower compared to other parts of the country.
Yeah, you know this, but I work a lot with relocation clients, people relocating to Louisiana from other states and people relocating out of Louisiana. But I see a reflection of that stat when I'm working with people. So if I have somebody moving here from California that I'm working with, they think everything's a steal of a deal because the houses are so expensive in California. So they come here and they can't believe how much house they can get for their money. But if they're moving here from, say, Mississippi or Arkansas, where the average prices are lower, they come here and it seems expensive to them because they can get more house for their money and where they're moving from. So I see that a lot, with people relocating here. It depends on where they're coming from as to whether they think our prices are good or not.
It's very interesting. I went on a trip to Alaska on a cruise and we flew into Seattle and we got an Uber from the Seattle airport to our hotel room. And the guy that was driving us, we were making small talk. And he was talking about the homeless issue that they have there. And it's apparently pretty bad. And I asked him, I said, well, what do the houses sell for here? And Tricia, it was insane. Like not even houses, to rent a 1-bedroom apartment was like $3,000. I'm like, no wonder there's so many homeless people in Seattle. I mean, it's $3,000 to rent an apartment. And, they have a few, I think one of the major airlines where they actually build the planes is in Seattle. I cannot believe this slipped my mind, but that's a major job force there for, most people work there that live in Seattle. Boeing. And so that's good. But outside of that, their housing, I can't imagine what their houses cost, but it's probably a fortune. And so it will contribute to, I guess, your homeless situation in cities like that. But a 1-bedroom apartment here, I don't know. I mean, maybe $1,200 versus $3,000 there. And I'm like, if y'all would solve that problem, you'd probably solve your homeless problem, maybe drop the prices a little bit. So just a little sidebar there on that. But in 2019, here's another interesting stat. 2019, 50% of homeowners find their home through social media posts. How about that?
It's true. I see that a lot. Buyer clients will message me and say, I saw this house on Facebook. And sometimes it's a coming soon, getting ready to go on the market in the next day or two. Or it's already listed for sale and the homeowner's just sharing. But I get buyers telling me that all the time. And of course, my listings obviously are advertised on social media.
Yeah, when you've got 50% of houses selling on social media,
no doubt.
If you're an agent, you would do yourself justice by posting on social media your homes or your clients. Yes, sure. Exactly. That's right. Your clients. And so that's huge because that's a change, and what I mean by that is social media, although it's been around a little while, it hasn't been around forever. In the late 80s or probably to the late 90s, you might have had in 1999, 10% maybe off social media. But it goes back to, again, what we were talking about with people being so visual. The good thing about a Facebook, for example, or a site similar to Facebook is you can see that house and then you can contact Tricia and you can say, I just saw a house on, Facebook. I want to look at it. It looks great on the pictures. So that's where that visual comes into play. So professional pictures, again, we're going back to that, but Miss Tricia uses professional pictures. 50% of houses are purchased off of social media post essentially. So that's why it's important to get hooked up with someone like Tricia, because those pictures are going to sell that house before Tricia gets on site, and then then it's all over. The house is sold, no problem.
Yeah, and that's a change. Like you said, I've been doing this full time for 14 years. So 14 years ago, that stat was not around. And so my marketing plan is always changing, adding to what's being done. When I first started, professional photos were not a thing, and now they are, and social media. But I just keep adding to and following the trends. You always have to know what the trends are because you want to keep up with the trends. So do I still do print advertising? Absolutely. I still do print advertising, but now I do a lot of targeted online advertising, Facebook boost post ads, all the things that, are trending now. But I don't eliminate things that are also still working.
Right.
The print advertising still important. And then the news, like Livingston Parish News, for instance.
Shout out.
Not only do they do, the print, but they also do online. So if you advertise with them, it's on their site as well. So all of it works hand in hand, like I said earlier, to cast every net out there, because we don't know where that buyer is going to find out about the house. We just want to make sure they do.
That's right. And the interesting thing about that type of advertising is, Livingston Parish News, good example. They do a click-through rate when you advertise with them. So if somebody's not actually clicking on it, you're not charged for it because you agree to a certain amount of clicks, basically, and they charge you per click. I hope I did that right, McHugh, in saying that. I hope I got it half right. I've been paying attention. So yeah, but you're absolutely right. And you want a realtor that's really going to kind of change with the times. The newspaper just print was huge 10, 15 years ago. That's the way you got houses out there in the little bucks.
Real estate book.
Thank you. Yeah, that you go into the health club or something and they'd have the little magazine rack. Back in the day, that's how you found a house. You just kind of flip through those. Now everything has kind of changed, and you want a realtor that's going to change with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about being on the cutting edge, but I still get calls. I still advertise in the real estate book. I still advertise in the newspaper.
People use them. Sure.
Yeah, because I get calls. If I didn't get calls from it, it's too expensive to do if I didn't get results. But I do get calls from it. So as long as I'm continuing to get results, and I'm monitoring that always to stay on the cutting edge, because if something stops working, we want to make sure, why is it not working anymore? I know you're a big stats guy, and I'm big on stats too. I need to know what's working for getting my listing sold to help that next listing get sold.
That's right. And she does things, she kind of goes the extra mile and does things to even think even more outside the box, like what you do with me with that weekly tip that you do. That's something that is advantageous to the community. And it also is, advantageous in the fact that it's keeping real estate out there, and it's kind of exposing, some things that and have learned over the years. And you make a great teacher, in real estate, if you ever plan on doing that, maybe when you're 100 or something, you get tired of selling them, but you really would.
It comes from having the heart of an educator. I like to educate my clients, and even newer, younger agents in my office. If they come to me with questions, I love sharing my knowledge, with them, because I have that heart of an educator. I want to share whatever knowledge I have.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. Here's another one for you. There are currently, and this is, this stat may be a couple days old, but there are currently 8,416 homes for sale in Louisiana. I would have thought there'd be more, but that probably fluctuates every day. I'm sure there's a site you can go to.
Well, there typically is more houses or more houses listed for sale, but inventory is low right now. Right now, just in Livingston Parish, there are about almost half of the houses listed for sale than there were a year ago. Yeah. So inventory's dropped by half. That's huge. That means that, and that's just single family homes. I checked the stats again this morning just to see what things were, and just single family residential homes in Livingston Parish have dropped almost 50% year over year. And I mean, It's just less houses for buyers to choose from. But the houses that are going on the market, if they're in good condition and priced right, they're selling. They're selling.
And so when you do have a drop in inventory, is that what's considered a seller's market? Is that how they kind of determine? Okay.
Yeah. And right now, even though it is a seller's market because inventory is lower, it's also a good buyer's market because interest rates are so low. A buyer can get a lot more house for their money, or they can get the same house for a lower house note, whatever their choice is on that. But it's a great time to buy, even though your inventory is lower. If you're pre-approved and ready to submit an offer when the right house comes on the market, it's a great time to buy.
Very interesting. Yeah, and that's probably what's creating the hot market overall is they're kind of matching each other there. You've got a good market on both ends. So here's an interesting stat. And this is something we were talking about earlier, the things you should consider outside of just your house when you're purchasing a home. One of them is commute time. You definitely want to consider that. Traffic. How bad is the traffic on the way to work from the house that you're in love with? Because you may not love it a whole long time if it takes you 5 times as long to get to work or whatever. So commute time's important, and that's something to consider. The average commute time from home to work in Louisiana, 25 minutes.
Not bad.
No, not bad at all. I would have thought that would have been more. Now, that doesn't count if there's something going on the bridge. Then it's 2 hours and 25 minutes. But on average, about 25 minutes. And I would say that's about right for just about everybody I know. When I think about where my friends work, it's probably about 25 minutes from their house in most cases. So that's about right.
A lot
and
of
not
times when I'm showing houses to buyers, if commute is important to them, they'll actually pull their phone out while we're at the house and enter the address of their office or wherever they work, the plant, and see what's the travel distance, time.
Yeah.
And so they're checking commute if that's important to them.
It is. I would think that, well, for me, that would be extremely important. I don't want to spend my life stuck in traffic, and I don't like traffic because it makes me late for things, and I don't like being late. But yeah, so very, very important to consider. And interestingly enough, if you lived in LA, for example, your average commute time, 2.5 hours. Tricia, 2.5 hours. You got to get up 2.5 hours earlier to get to work on time than normal. That's crazy.
Yeah, my son and my daughter and son-in-law live right outside of Los Angeles in a little town called Tustin. And when they were looking for their home earlier this year, they took into consideration how close was it to my grandson's school. My son-in-law is a teacher, so how close was it to the school where he teaches? They wanted something because they didn't want to have to deal with that Los Angeles traffic. So the area where they looked was very concentrated just in Tustin to make sure they stayed close to where they wanted to be, because Los Angeles commute times are terrible. So they wanted to be where they could be just a few minutes away from their job and school.
Yeah, it totally blew my mind. I'm like 2.5 hours commute every day would just be ridiculous.
And it depends on where you work too. I've sold houses in Livingston Parish to somebody who worked at a TV station downtown Baton Rouge. And he said, I go to work at 4 a.m. So my commute, there's never going to be traffic.
Yeah, he's
at 4
5 minutes.
He's fine. And he said, when I get off, I think he got off like 10 or 11 in the morning. He said, I'm headed back to Livingston Parish, no problem. Somebody works at a plant and has to go in early hours of the morning, or if they're a nurse and they work, certain hours. So some occupations, the commute doesn't fall where it's rush hour traffic.
Yeah.
And so all that plays into it. But a lot of people will buy in Ascension Parish, Livingston Parish, and they work downtown Baton Rouge. But if their job has it where they're going in, when not everybody else is going in, and the commute's not going to be an issue for them.
Yeah, good point. Now, I don't know how old this stat was. I went off of Google, but I Googled the most expensive home currently for sale in Louisiana market, and it says...
The one here in Baton Rouge?
Off Island?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, is that the Toy Mansion? Is that the mansion off the Toy? Remember with Richard Pryor, that show, The Toy?
I don't know if that's the one. I know it sold a couple of years ago. I think it was for sale for $12 million and sold for $6 million, but now it's for sale for $14 million. It's a beautiful home. It's huge.
I wonder if it's the Pennington Mansion. There's one on, it didn't say, it just said the mansion. And I'm like, whose house is that for $14 million?
Not owned by the Pennington now.
Right.
But yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know the house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Side note, that's our paint on that house.
Do you know a buyer who's interested?
Yeah. Would you like to sell that one?
I would like to sell that house to them.
I'd like to buy it.
It is a beautiful house. I have to say it's a beautiful house.
Yes.
And it should be.
It should, yeah. For $14 million, it better have a mud room. That's all. That's all I can say.
I think it has to.
Indeed. Now, well, thank you very much for coming by.
Oh, my pleasure.
I love having Tricia come by. She is a wealth of information. and just a joy to have around. So you can see Tricia Johnston every Friday on Local Leaders, the podcast, presenting her real estate tip of the week, which is very informative. So look for that. Tricia, if these good folks are interested, a lot of people have heard today some, the little things that you do is what I wanted to kind of touch on today. And if they're interested in having you represent them in their purchase, either for a sell or a buy, how do they get in touch?
Probably the best way is to call me. We can have a conversation, set up a time to meet. My cell phone is 225-754-2000. And then, they can call or text if that's better for them. If it's a buyer or a seller, the first thing I really like to do is set up a time to meet in person.
Sure.
And that's where the magic starts, right there, our initial appointment. And I'll be glad to answer any questions they have. Sometimes people might say, well, I'm not ready to buy until next spring, or I'm not ready to sell until next summer. But now's the time to call and let's have a conversation to make sure that when you are ready to buy and sell early next year, mid next year, that you've done everything you needed to do to get your home ready to list for sale or to get your financial ducks in a row to buy. I'm working with a couple right now. We're going to go look at houses on Saturday. They're not ready to buy until April, but they've decided that they want new construction. Well, if they want to choose a lot and a floor plan and build from the ground up, now's the time for us to go look and get under construction. So while they thought they were calling me too soon, once we started having the conversation about what they want and I found out that they wanted new construction, like, well, do you want to build it or you want to buy one already built? They said, we want to build. I said, okay, well then let's get going. So we've already had our initial appointment where I gave them all the scoop of the buying process, and now the fun starts. Saturday we go look at subdivisions and lots and floor plans. So it's not too soon to have a conversation, and then we'll get a game plan in place from there.
Fantastic. Yeah. So don't delay. She'd love to talk to you, and she can advise you on all of that stuff relative to real estate. No doubt about it. I wanted to give you a free little t-shirt here. This is the Local Leaders Podcast official Ultra Cotton t-shirts. So those are great to wear. We got some cool weather coming in. And so you can wear Local Leaders with pride.
I will.
I appreciate that. Now, for all you viewers and listeners out there, Tricia's, I love it when Tricia comes by. She's a wealth of knowledge, and I love to talk real estate. So she's going to be coming by every now and then. And, real estate is something that's kind of ever changing. We talked about that earlier. So I like to kind of keep that going and sit down with someone who is way in the know when it comes to real estate. So she's going to be by every now and then, and we're going to do these things because the viewers love it. And you can really never give people enough information on real estate. And
I encourage people, if they have any questions, to reach out to me, reach out to you, and we can talk about it during the next either podcast, or I can cover it in the real estate tip of the week.
Yeah, definitely. Just
let us know what your questions are.
Yeah, we'd love to answer, or she would love to answer anything. You don't want me answering. I didn't even know what a mudroom was.
So, you are forgiven.
Yeah, I'd like to thank McHugh David, as always, for his engineering of this podcast. My guest for today, Miss Tricia Johnston of Latter Blum Realty, the Livingston Parish News for the space, and all you viewers and listeners for your support. Please follow me on all my social media and spread the word. The more shares we get, the more people we get to expose to these local business owners that, we all want to support each other. It's very important. And I appreciate all of you that do that every day. Thank you to my sponsors. I could not do any of this without all of you. If you're interested in sponsoring Local Leaders or appearing on the podcast, please reach out to me by emailing jim@paintpodcast.com. Until next time, I am Jim Chapman, reminding you, love your community, support local business, and keep leading. Sporting Center in Denham Springs is your one-stop shop for team sports equipment, school uniforms, and promotional goods. Conveniently located next to the Antique Village since 1977. Sporting Center, your business means everything to them because your name rides on everything they do.